Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scripture for August the 16th. Our readings for today find us in Nehemiah chapter 12, starting in verse 27, going all the way through the end of Nehemiah 13, which also happens to be the end of Nehemiah. And then we have 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 1 through 16, Psalm 35, 1 through 16, and Proverbs chapter 21, verses 17 and 18. Now, 1 Corinthians, this 11th chapter, starts a bit of controversy in the church today. And the reason for that is it has to do with the relationship between a husband and a wife and how women are to behave within church. Now, here's the thing about 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians is a situational letter, meaning that Paul is writing to address specific situations that are going on within that church. Now, within this letter, there are a variety of truths. Some of them are timeless truths, meaning that there are certain things that we understand to be carried out throughout the time of the church. And the reason for that is because these statements are confirmed in other letters and other parts of Scripture. However, there are other parts of it that are also addressed specifically for the church in Corinth, because he wants to make sure that they are being different from the way that other religions are in Corinth. Some of what we're about to see in this is that very same thing. When Paul starts talking about head coverings. Now, head coverings here are to denote modesty. Okay, that's the reason why Paul is communicating and saying, hey, you need to wear head coverings here, when he says that this is why, for if a woman will not cover her head, then she should cut her hair short. Paul's like, you got to cover your head. The reason for this is because Paul is trying to help the church of Corinth differentiate between religions of the time that celebrated temple prostitution. They celebrated women being promiscuous. They celebrated them having multiple partners. It was really a pretty dark time in Corinth for these things. These religions basically celebrated sex as part of the religious worship service. And so you would have these temple prostitutes, and they would look and appear in certain ways. And as a result of that, Paul is trying to help the church in Corinth recognize we need to look and be different. And so Paul says, to respond to that, women need to wear head coverings because the temple prostitutes didn't. If they don't, they need to cut their hair short. Why? Because the temple prostitutes wore long hair and ornate jewelry and all these different things. Paul is basically talking about how we need to make sure that we are different from everything else that the world has to offer. This is the reason why Paul starts the statement with, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Paul was choosing to walk in specific ways of self-sacrifice, all for the sake and the glory of God. So when Paul gives these commandments here, he is trying to help them understand that the other religions are doing it this way, and as a result of that, we need to make sure that people don't mistake us for these other religions, for these other cults. So Paul continues to do that. If anyone is inclined to be contentious, have no such practices, nor do the churches of God. In other words, we need to make sure that we are recognizing how God has created things. And Paul does talk about the relationship between a man and a woman in this. Now, this isn't the only time that Paul talks about this, which is one of the reasons why we can make the conversation about complementarianism, is because this is not the only instance that talks about the relationship of how a husband and wife should be. And we're going to talk more about that here in the coming days. But ultimately, what we have to recognize this section for is that it is all designed to be different. We as Christians should be different. Our behavior, how we dress, how we speak, all should reflect Christ and should be different from the way that the world does. And this is a constant battle, especially for our young people. I have daughters, I have sons, and I watch them struggle with their identity at times in this world and what their place is in this world. Sometimes they get sucked in and lured by the things of the world, and other times they have victory. And that's all of our battle. How can we make sure that we are being different from the standard of the world? But not just being different for the sake of being different, but being different to help people understand what the standard of God is, to help them see something that's actually, strangely enough, more attractive, more fulfilling, offers more opportunity for a life worth living if we choose to follow God's way. Okay, there's our thoughts for today. Have a blessed one.